Ovigwe Eguegu, who's a policy advisor at Development Reimagined. Ovigwe, thank you so much. It's always good to have you on. I just wanted to explain a bit of the background about what's happened in Mozambique. So this case is almost 10 years old when those loans were taken out by the Mozambican government. And then it came to light. So the trial has been going on since at least February. Now we're getting the verdicts. Tell me about the gentleman called Ndambi Gwebuza, who is the son of a former president. He is charged with taking a bribe to persuade his father to approve to take that $2 billion loan. What do you make of this case?
Yeah, this is one of those very, really high-profile cases in African countries where most of the time we don't get to trial because of the status of people involved. But in the case of Mozambique, it's very surprising that this level of corruption is being investigated, and not just investigated. Since the trial started last year till now, within a very short period of time, we're already seeing conviction, the verdict being reached, because very often we find that with high-profile cases, they are dragged on for years and years, and before it really is out of the public consciousness. So, but in this particular instance, there's sort of a very positive, feeling is living in the minds of people in Mozambique and around the continent. So with the son of the former president, of course, he played a major role in facilitating these hidden debts because of the way it was, bypassed the executive council, the parliament. Nobody really knew what was going on. So that kind of corruption needs a certain level of influence, and he was the one that was very much in charge of this.
Is this something to do with the fact that for decades it's always been the Frelimo party that has been politically in charge of Mozambique? Is that an issue, the fact that there may be a lack of accountability because it's almost as if it's friend passing over to friend?
Exactly. And also because if you look at the other senior officials involved, they come from the same cohort or cadre, if you will. So that's the thing. When you have a party state, somewhat of a party state like we've had in Mozambique, corruption that happens at a very high level tends to go underreported, and even when they are reported, they are just squashed away. But in this instance, it's very encouraging to see that this is getting to trial. No, it didn't just go to trial. We're seeing conviction, and there's a very likelihood that those convicted will actually go to prison without finding some form of loopholes to avoid jail.
Ovigwe, do you think there's some sort of common factor when you look at the list of the most corrupt countries in the world and the list of the poorest countries in the world, and Mozambique is pretty near the bottom of both of those lists? Is there a correlation between those two factors, poverty and corruption?
Of course, a very strong one. And I would even go further to say corruption actually creates the conditions that lead to poverty and all of the attending problems. So one of the major problems African countries facing is misrule or bad governance, because without that, no matter how well you get development finance and all of the support from international organizations, once the monies given to countries are not being used for what they are meant to do, you're not going to really move forward with development. And one of the reasons why I think there is such a huge crackdown on corruption in certain countries, we're seeing in Malawi as well, we're seeing this in Mozambique now, South Africa, and many other countries, because there's a realization that we can't just keep talking about development, and more monies to be given to African countries for development when what is already being received via revenue or even aid is being squandered. And that's why it's very important that these type of high-profile cases are prosecuted, because it sends a strong message to those currently in governance that you would not get away with these type of crimes against the country. And that is why this case is very, very crucial, and something other leaders will be watching very closely, both in South Africa and other countries where there are high-profile cases or currently in trial.
It doesn't, I mean, it's not a trial at the moment in South Africa, but it doesn't get more high profile than a president. Cyril Ramaphosa in 2020, at a farm that he owns, $4 million was stolen from the farm. He's accused of trying to cover it up including by kidnapping and trying to bribe the burglars. $580,000 that was stolen as part of that robbery was found in the cushions of a sofa. That's just too bizarre. The president of South Africa is not supposed to have $4 million, right? It doesn't pay that much, the job.
No, it doesn't. But one of the reasons why he is able to muddy the waters because Cyril Ramaphosa was actually already a very rich person before he became president, right? So in a way, it is very disappointing that someone as wealthy as he was before he became president, he's still engaged in this type of practices. Because one of the reasons why people trusted him and voted for him because his predecessor, Jacob Zuma, who wasn't a very successful businessman compared to Cyril Ramaphosa, was also involved in state capture, and he currently, of course, was sent to prison for contempt of court and all of that. So the reason why Cyril Ramaphosa was able to garner support of South Africans was because they already saw him as a wealthy person, so he's not someone who is going to go into office to embezzle public funds. So when this made news, it was very devastating to many people who were very supportive of Cyril Ramaphosa. And right now, the way he's even managing the case doesn't even inspire a lot of confidence in his supporters. And I think as we're leading up to elections, it's very likely that the events is going to hurt him in the polls.
Wow, that really would be something. Ovigwe, thank you so much indeed. Ovigwe Eguegu in Ankara.